Millions of American voters have been left befuddled by events of yesterday, when Donald Trump, incumbent president and candidate of the Republican Party, declared himself winner of the 2020 presidential election, even as counting of ballots was still in progress. President Trump told a group of his supporters in the White House East Room that he had garnered enough votes from some of the key battleground states to secure re-election, accusing his Democratic Party rival Joe Biden and his party of stealing the election. Though analysts say this turn of events is unprecedented in the history of American democracy. Joining us from our London studio is Arise London correspondent and special U.S. political analyst, Laurie Laird. Good morning, Laurie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Laurie. Well, yesterday morning, when we were discussing the American election, we were thinking, oh, this will go President Trump's way, and you and Dan Warren seem to be so sure. But things change very quickly in the course of the day, and this morning we have a different, prospect. So what exactly changed? What happened? And how soon are we likely to get a final result?
I was wondering if you would remind me of that call, because you're absolutely right. 24 hours ago, things looked a lot brighter for Donald Trump. And honestly, I was sitting here listening to your introduction, hoping that you had forgot about that. But you were absolutely right. Things really did look a lot brighter for Donald Trump yesterday. That fewer ballots had been counted, but Donald Trump had some very, very small but strong enough leads to make us think that counting would continue to favor him and that he would win a lot of these states where we still don't have a result. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and crucially at that time, Michigan and Wisconsin. Donald Trump was ahead in both those states. And Dan and I shouldn't pull my colleague Dan into this, but we did to a certain extent fall into a trap. We were looking at the voting, and we were expecting that when we saw votes 80–90% counted, that the trend would continue to reflect what we had seen in the past, which was a slight but significant lead for Donald Trump. What we didn't do is pay attention to many of the pollsters who told us to say, look, it's going to be money of this early voting will favor Donald Trump. Donald Trump supporters have told pollsters that they are more likely to go to the polling booth rather than vote early. It's the Democrats who predominantly have voted early, and those early votes may be at the back of the queue for counting in some states. That is precisely what happened in a number of states, crucially Wisconsin and Michigan, which went to Joe Biden last night, and now we have a number of states that where we're seeing ballots come in. Pennsylvania in particular, where Donald Trump still has a fairly sizable lead, about 165,000 votes to my calculation, but Joe Biden is narrowing the count with every vote that is counted. Pennsylvania officials say that about 750,000 votes are still outstanding. They say about 70% of absentee ballots were sent to registered Democrats that could favor Joe Biden. However, keep in mind that just because a registered Democrat requested an absentee ballot, that doesn't mean that they will vote Democrat once they receive that. So Pennsylvania still has the largest number of votes to count. And don't forget that Pennsylvania at the moment can accept ballots until Friday once they are received, regardless of the postmark. So Pennsylvania, let's take that out of the equation for a few minutes, because it will be days before we have an answer there. Arizona, very, very interesting. Now look, some newscasters, some news organizations have already called this for Joe Biden. If you put Arizona in the Biden camp, he's up to 264 electoral votes. That's tantalizingly close to that 270. But we've just had an update from Maricopa County. That is the county that surrounds Phoenix, Arizona, the biggest city there. And recent counting over the past couple of hours there, shows Donald Trump narrowing the gap. Biden is in the lead, but the latest batch of votes has tended to narrow the gap with Trump. So that throws Arizona, a state that has been called on and off by a number of news organizations, puts the status of Arizona in question a little bit.
Thank you, Laurie. Well, 24 hours is a long time in politics, so you're not to blame, frankly. I want to talk about the...
Well, thank you for the reminder, though.
Dr. Abati forgets nothing. I want to talk about the plethora of lawsuits. You have 300 filed in 45 states before the election. Pennsylvania alone, there are 5 pending cases at state and federal level. Can Donald Trump successfully sue his way into a second term? Does he have any provable statutory or constitutional violations that he could lean on?
That's an absolutely excellent question. And I was speaking with some lawyers in the state of Pennsylvania late last night. They feel that Donald Trump says this, confusing where lawsuits have been filed. Trump has said that he has in fact filed lawsuits in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, querying voter registration, querying whether the count was being supervised adequately. There has been no evidence that those lawsuits have been filed. Now, lawyers in Pennsylvania say that they see absolutely no case. Frivolous was the word that they used to describe it. And in Pennsylvania in particular, and particularly in Philadelphia, the biggest city, the counting is being conducted, it's being live streamed. There are webcams all over most of the Philadelphia counting area. So if you want to verify the vote yourself, if you want to see what's going on, you can do that from your desktop. So in Philadelphia, in much of Pennsylvania, the attempts at transparency have been quite remarkable. So the people do not feel that the lawsuits that are based on voter ID or on whether people opening the votes have been sufficiently secure, sufficiently careful. The feeling right now is that is not going anywhere. But let's see. There's certainly... Donald Trump has a team of lawyers. Joe Biden has a team of lawyers. If they file enough suits, they may find something sticks. One thing that is a little bit more worrying, and when I say worrying, I mean for all Americans, because it could throw the entire result into question, is a pending legal action, again, in the state of Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court did allow this reasonably controversial, at least to the Republicans, allow ballots that are received up until Friday to be counted as legal ballots. And again, even if the postmark is not legible, those ballots can be counted and put into one column or the other, Joe Biden or Donald Trump. The Republicans appealed that state Supreme Court ruling all the way to the National Supreme Court. The National Supreme Court voted 4-4. Amy Coney Barrett did not consider this case. They voted 4-4 to uphold the Pennsylvania ruling. However, they reserved the right to look at it again if the Republicans find another reason to ask the Supreme Court to look at this. And that process has already started, so that those later arriving ballots in Pennsylvania could potentially still be the source of legal action. And I think regardless of where you stand on wanting Donald Trump to win, wanting Joe Biden to win, I think it might be healthier for America if Pennsylvania were not the decisive state, because regardless of what happens in Pennsylvania, there is still a bit of a legal cloud hanging over the legitimacy of these late arriving votes in the state.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Laurie, concerning that, what I understand is the fact that as long as it's a state law, the state Supreme Court will be the last arbiter of testing that law. So why did that flip? Why did that change? And I also want to talk about, the recount in Wisconsin and the modus operandi behind the recount that the Trump team has asked for in Wisconsin.
You have with the legal question. You've come up with a very, very good question. And the Supreme Court, there's no rhyme or reason as to which issues the Supreme Court can take up. You are absolutely right and very astute when you point out that the Supreme Court so far has been reluctant to overrule state Supreme Court rulings, but it is significant that the federal Supreme Court did reserve the right to take this Pennsylvania case up again. And in fact, the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, would refuse to allow late ballots to be counted in Wisconsin. But the ruling at which that they were adjudicating on was from a lower federal court, not the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. So you're right. The Supreme Court has not wanted to fiddle with state Supreme Court laws, but again, they have agreed to potentially look at this Pennsylvania law somewhere down the road if the Republicans decide to appeal to the Supreme Court yet again. The Supreme Court basically said to the Republicans, come back to us with regards to Pennsylvania if you have any evidence that the late arrival of ballots is somehow fraudulently skewing the result of the poll. So that gives the Republicans an open door to lobby the Supreme Court again. So that could be very interesting, and that could really put Pennsylvania under a cloud. And you mentioned there was another question you had that was
mentioned
really
about
good
the
one,
recount in Wisconsin.
I got you caught up in my Supreme Court.
Okay. I mentioned about the recount in Wisconsin.
Much.
I mentioned about the recount in Wisconsin. What's the modus operandi?
I would not be surprised to see the Republicans, the Trump campaign, request recounts in many jurisdictions, anywhere where it is going to be close. And that could include Arizona, that could include Georgia, where Joe Biden is surprisingly to me, narrowing Donald Trump's lead there. All the states have rules under which there'll be an automatic recount. And that varies from state to state. In some states, it's a margin of victory of under 0.5%, but any party has the right to lobby for a recount. They have to pay for it themselves, but they can go to the state and say, look, we are requesting a recount. Typically, the requesting party pays, and if there is a reversal of the decision, that money is refunded. Again, I would suspect that Donald Trump and his team will request recounts. It stretches this thing out. It allows him to lobby his supporters a little bit. Historically, over the years between 2000 and 2015, there have been something along the lines of 2,300 requests for recount at state and federal level. Very, very few of these, I think fewer than 10, had actually led to a reversal of a ballot.
Well, Laurie, 5 battleground states still in play. But is there any possibility that we could reach a point whereby President Trump changes his mind and just accepts the outcome if it favors Vice President Biden? And if that were to happen, what would possibly be the likely scenario that would lead to that? Or the lawsuits are given and we should just wait for legal battles ahead?
I really would not want to go into Donald Trump's head. It feels like, from the outside, an unusual place. Donald Trump has not given any sense, particularly with these lawsuits, that he is willing to give up. However, it seems odd to me that we haven't seen anything from him over the past 24 hours. This is unusual. This is a man who loves being in front of the crowds. He loves rallying his supporters. He loves to be on a podium crying foul, crying victim. So I find it extremely surprising that we haven't heard more from him, particularly after Joe Biden spoke to people very briefly yesterday and spoke in what I thought was a rather presidential way. He talked about uniting the country. He talked about how he wanted to be the president of all of America, that he envisioned an America where there weren't blue states and red states. There were all of the states. Donald Trump has been tweeting. Most of his tweets have been along the lines of calling foul in so many of these votes. One thing that I find quite striking is we're starting to see, I saw a number on various television broadcasts last night, early this morning, a number of Republican operatives who have ever so slightly started to distance themselves from the president. It feels a little bit, we're seeing a lot of Republicans, even Mitch McConnell last night, the Senate Majority Leader, who is largely a vocal supporter of Donald Trump, he has stepped back and he is calling for a peaceful counting of the votes. He's calling for people to be patient. Let's see what the outcome of this election is. Feels to me that Donald Trump's crazy stronghold on the Republican Party and his leadership of the party has been almost a personality cult. So many prominent Republicans have been afraid to cross him in public. Feels to me like it's possible that that break is starting to, or that link is starting to loosen a little bit. And I think if Donald Trump were to lose the support of the Republican Party establishment, he may have no choice but to go peacefully.
Yes, the Republican Party has been a lot more restrained than Donald Trump has been. Thank goodness for that. But let's take a look at the down-ballot elections. Are you surprised by what happened in the Senate? It was posited by a lot of people that the Democrats will get the Senate majority. That has not materialized. Even vulnerable Republicans managed to hold on to their seats. And also in the House, the Democrats did hold the House, but the majority is narrower, which will make for pretty hard work for Nancy Pelosi coming up. What are your thoughts on that? And also, well, it might be a bit premature to start looking at the midterm, so forget that. It's a bit worrying. Even if Joe Biden wins, the Biden presidency, could be thwarted at every turn. Look at what happened with Obama.
Look, you guys don't need me here. You really have come up with all the best points. And I'm so glad you bring this point up because there has been so much focus on the presidential race. And Donald Trump is a colorful character. We tend to follow him because you never know what he's going to do next. You never know if he's going to say something outrageous. But honestly, equally important are these down ballot races, particularly in the Senate. Am I surprised about the outcome of the Senate? I profess to be surprised, but looking back, I think that Democrats were probably a little bit overly optimistic in their quest to take back the Senate, or they're talking about their quest to take back the Senate. And as you rightly point out, some of these Senate races that were meant to be close were not close in any way. Susan Collins of Maine was meant to be in the race of her life. She won easily in Maine. Lindsey Graham, we thought was facing a very well-funded challenger in the form of Jamie Harris in South Carolina. Again, the race of his life, he won that easily. And Jamie Harrison, an African-American, was one of the most heavily funded Senate candidates in U.S. history. So I think that we probably got a little bit overly ambitious. Everybody got a little overly ambitious in hearing the Democrats talk about their chances of taking back the Senate. In reality, I think that was more wishful thinking than it turned out to be. It presents what you rightly point out as a recipe for gridlock, as we have seen over the past 8 years, as we've seen over the past 12 years. You're right. During the Obama years, we will have the Democrats controlling the House of Representatives, but with a slightly less of a majority. Looks like we will have the Republicans controlling the Senate. We have a mood where Republicans and Democrats cannot agree on facts. They can barely agree on what day it is. So you're absolutely right. Regardless of who is president, it does not bode well for legislation. And look, America needs to legislate right now. America has a lot of big issues in its inbox, not least the fact that a stimulus package to help Americans without jobs or struggling financially from the effects of coronavirus, that's the latest stimulus package, which was considered to be generous to people, very generous by American standards for people who had lost their jobs. That ran off on July 31st. Both parties left Congress for August recess without coming up with another one. We don't even have another one on the table. The Democrats and the Republicans are so very far apart on legislation that most people would consider to be extremely important. So when you point out the recipe for gridlock, you're absolutely right. And this is something that I think is being underreported because the development of the presidential race is intrinsically fascinating, but it isn't the only race in town.
Okay. I mean, Laurie, great point made there. But I just quickly want to talk about, the need to be able to understand the peculiarities of a time like this in American politics. It's going down to the wires. There are a lot of things to be done in America, but it might go to the Supreme Court. Do you fear for that? And secondly, I want to talk about the bullishness of the right-wing media for Biden. In fact, it was Fox News that first called a 264 score for Biden yesterday. I was shocked. Even the so-called liberal media like MSNBC is still very conservative in the results. Is that a sign Trump is leaving? And also talk to me about the Supreme Court being a cardinal point of these elections.
I completely share your shock that Fox News was one of the first to declare Arizona for Joe Biden. And in fact, with the latest results that have come in, it's not entirely clear that we can put Arizona in the Biden camp at this point. As I mentioned earlier, latest polling shows Donald Trump actually narrowing that gap. But the media on both sides has, I think, played a role in polarizing Americans. We've talked endlessly about Fox and its until recent support for Donald Trump, unquestionable support. Donald Trump has felt that Fox's support has waned a little bit, and over the past 4 weeks, 6 weeks, we have seen some tweets that have been critical of Fox News for not being perhaps as easy on him as he would have liked. But I'm prepared to level criticism at the mainstream media, the non-Fox media, if you will, as well. CNN, MSNBC, these media organizations over the past 6 weeks or so have been so adamant in their disdain for Donald Trump that to a certain extent, I think it played into Donald Trump's narrative that the media is out to get me. I can't get a fair shake. It's difficult to put these news channels on and learn anything about the world other than what Donald Trump said today. So when Americans say they're frustrated with the mainstream media, I'll put my hand up and say I share that. At least the broadcast media on both sides has not clearly covered the campaign. It's been clear. It's gone through a focus of prejudice on either side.
Well, thank you very much, Laurie Laird. Thank you very much indeed.